This video may contain spoilers for every Marvel project aside from Deadpool and Wolverine. At the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, Vulture was met by a man with a Scorpion tattoo, confirming that Scorpion was headed to the MCU sometime soon.
It's on our little spider friend?
But that never happened. It's been 5 years. We've gotten 2 more Spidey films, and there's been no sight of Scorpion whatsoever. Thankfully, this was a fluke. Barely any pre-Endgame movies made promises they couldn't keep. But post-Endgame, it feels like we get teasers every other movie for some character or event that never ends up happening. End scenes don't feel like a glimpse at the future, they feel like a maybe, depending on how much audiences like the movie the end scene is attached to, and what direction the next director wants to take the story. But it got me wondering, mathematically, how much better were pre-Endgame end scenes? How many teases never came true? How long on average did it take for a tease to become reality? And how have those numbers changed since Endgame? I did the math, and the results were so much worse than I was expecting. First off, to understand how bad it is now, let's look back at the Infinity Saga. Several films have humorous end scenes, but we're here to talk about teases for upcoming projects, so your shawarma and Groot dancing scenes aren't going to be considered for today's conversation. Over the course of 22 movies, I'm going to count Spider-Man Far From Home as a post-Endgame movie because it came after Endgame, we got 23 post-credit teases for upcoming movies. And of those 23, only 2 never ended up happening. One was the previously mentioned Scorpion scene, while the other came at the end of Doctor Strange, where Mordo promised to hunt down all the remaining wizards. So with 21 of 23 coming true, that gives the pre-Endgame movies a delivery rate of 91%, which is honestly really good. So how about the average time between a tease and a delivery? Of the 21 completed teases, 15 were answered within a year, so that's 65% of all end scenes. The 6 teases that took longer range from 2 to 5 years, which includes Guardian 2's Adam Warlock tease, Tony Stark's cameo in The Incredible Hulk, Wakanda's tease at the end of Civil War, the Wasp's tease in Ant-Man, and both Avengers 1 and Age of Ultron's Thanos teases. Still, when you add all the time between a tease and a delivery, the average wait time is 16.5 months, or 1 year and 4.5 months. Heck, I even did the math, and 31% of all teases were delivered on in the very next movie. So yeah, overall, the pre-Endgame MCU overwhelmingly delivered, and it did it in a timely manner. So one final stat. When were there the most unanswered end scenes, and how many were there? The answer is between Guardians 2 and Infinity War, where at any given time there were 7 unanswered end scenes, 2 of which are the ones that never got answered. So how have those numbers changed? Now before I get into the math, there's 2 end scenes I want to disqualify because they're a bit too on the line. Guardian 3's end scene features Peter Quill hanging out with his dad on Earth, and Wakanda Forever's end scene shows that T'Challa has a son living outside of Wakanda. Do either of these things count as teasers? They both show cool details, but they feel more like soft endings. Peter Quill is living on Earth now, and the credits said he will be returning sometime down the line. But I feel like you can say this is the end of Peter Quill's story and walk away. It's not the same cliffhanger, what's gonna happen next vibe you get from pretty much everything else. The Wakanda Forever one had a similar vibe, but leaned a bit more towards tease in my mind. To clear things up, I did a poll asking my subscribers if they considered it a tease for future projects or a tribute to Chadwick Boseman and the character of T'Challa, and they picked tribute, so I'll be skipping that one too. Thanks guys, that saved me some time. It might seem like I'm doing the post-Endgame saga a favor, but let's get into the math and show you that's far from the truth. From Spider-Man Far From Home to Deadpool and Wolverine, we've gotten 22 end scenes that tease future projects, and of those 22, Marvel's only delivered on 8 of them. Now that number sounds horrible, and it is, but you have to remember the difference is this saga is not over. 3 of the unanswered teases have a high chance of being delivered on in the next year. Falcon and the Winter Soldier teased Carter talking to someone, which will probably lead directly into Thunderbolts. Blade was apparently teased at the end of Eternals, and Kingpin's end scene at the end of Echo will probably be continued with next year's Daredevil Born Again show. If you add all of those to the total, that means 11 of 22 have foreseeable answers, or 50%, which is a far cry from the Infinity Saga's 91%. Now let's be generous. There's 4 movies next year, 2 Avengers movies after that, and let's say 4 more movies in between. Maybe even a few shows. Between now and then, Thanos' brother Harry Styles must return and do something. Doctor Strange has to stop an incursion with the Pink Lady, which to be fair could be a part of Avengers Secret Wars. Hercules needs to challenge Thor. Monica Rambeau must return to the MCU with these X-Men variants. Spider-Man or some hero has to deal with the symbiote Venom left behind. Abomination needs to help Wong with something. Shang-Chi must join the Avengers, which according to leaks will probably happen in Avengers Doomsday. Shang-Chi's sister has to do something now that she owns the 10 rings. Miss Marvel must form the Young Avengers. Moon Knight's story has to be continued now that we know he's got a 3rd personality. And the infinite army of Kangs has to become some kind of threat to the multiverse. Except we know for a fact that last one isn't happening. Jonathan Majors, the actor for Kang, was fired and replaced with Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, so that plotline will go nowhere. I'm not saying there's a 0 chance the other 10 won't be followed up on, but I think it's unlikely. And now that we've talked about the amount of end scenes post-Endgame Marvel has delivered on, how about we talk about the average time it took them to do it? Again, we only have 8 end scenes that have been properly delivered on, and when you do the math, it takes an average of 20.4 months, or 1 year and 8.5 months, to get some kind of continuation of an end scene. But that doesn't really tell the full story, does it? All those scenes I mentioned a moment ago are still waiting to be followed up on. So if I add how many months it's been between those end scenes releasing and now, the average wait goes up to 24.6 months, over 2 years. And even that's lowballing it, because that assumes that all of these get answered today. By the time the Multiverse Saga ends, the average wait between seeing a post-credit tease and seeing that tease become a reality will probably be double what it was in the Infinity Saga. Marvel's frankly just taking too long to deliver on their promises. Let me show a few more horrendous stats. Only 23% of all post-endgame teases have been answered within a year, which is nearly 1/3 of what the Infinity Saga did. That number can go up to 28% depending on how Daredevil Born Again goes, but it's still horrendous. 30% of the teases have taken 3 years or longer for Marvel to deliver on, which is about double the pre-endgame rate. And I tried to math out how many end scenes were delivered on next project, but that stat is frankly impossible and slightly unfair because of the amount of MCU shows. For anyone wondering though, the answer is 0%. So how can Marvel fix this problem? Frankly, I don't think they can. Very few of next year's projects look able to answer the plot threads they've left dangling, and each of these upcoming movies and shows probably have even more teases that won't go anywhere anytime soon. You can't let 14 different cliffhangers, which is 2 times more than the most of the Infinity Saga, go unanswered for years and expect anyone to think your story is actually going anywhere. These unanswered teases are just more reason to think they never really had a concrete plan for the MCU after Endgame. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Which end scenes do you think deserve to be continued sometime soon? And was there a particular end scene that killed your enthusiasm for post-credit scenes in general? As always, tell me in the comments.